Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is episode 168. So this topic came directly out of the bonus episode and the meditation we did last week. If you would like to access that, you need to be a member of the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary online community. There's a link in the podcast notes to get directly to sign up for that. Or you can go to paulataylorenergy.com, go to the savings and subscriptions, learn more about what all that includes, all the exclusive content and discounts you get by joining that community. So about a month ago, we did a show that I called Beyond the Horizon of Fear. Today's show is called Beyond the Horizon of Hurt. And I think that these last couple of moon cycles, there's been really intense shadow work. There's been really intense release work. We've been called to release some really intense things, some really deeply rooted shadows, aspects of ourselves that we haven't really been able to look at before now. Last month, it really felt like it was focused on fear, really identifying and releasing fear. This month, it's felt like it's really been focused on identifying and releasing hurt. And I'm just going to go right into my story for this to make this a little bit more concrete. And it's interesting because this topic came to me immediately after the meditation we did last week. That is when I started identifying some of these things that were going on. And I almost did the episode for this week earlier in the week. And I'm glad I didn't, because I was missing kind of the last piece of what really does lie beyond the horizon of hurt until just yesterday. So after we did the meditation last week, we moved a lot of energy. There was a lot of density. I was feeling it. I was having kind of a flare-up of chronic pain. I haven't been feeling very good physically and emotionally, just feeling kind of heavy and not exactly sure why. And so after we moved all this energy last week, I started becoming aware of this area in my solar plexus, just below the rib cage. And when I looked at it, it came to me as like on those old 90s talk shows, like Oprah, fat was the bad guy. They were always talking about how bad fat was. And they would bring out this big glob of this like yellow stuff and be like, this is what 3 pounds of fat looks like or whatever. And it was like all kind of gross looking and kind of just yellow and weird. That's what this area in my solar plexus looked like. That's like when I looked at it in my mind's eye, that's the visual I got. And I was like, oh, that's not very good. Like, what is that? And when you ask something in your field, in your body, what it is, it has to answer you. So right away, I got this sense that this was like, betrayal is the word that came to me, that this was like a collection of all the betrayals that I'd ever had. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because like I started thinking of some of the bigger ones. And I was like, but I've worked through these, like I've let go of these things. And the answer I got was like, mostly. So essentially, energetically, what came to me was this idea that there was residue left behind. Every time I was hurt in a situation, and especially in something that felt like a betrayal, even if I worked through it, even if I did all the processing, it had left behind this like kind of residual goo, this kind of yellowy, slick, oily, kind of gross goo. And over a lifetime, that's a lot of residue, even if I've worked through to the extent of my ability at that time, and it had coalesced into this big like chunk of, again, what looked like the 90s talk show kind of demonstration of like fat. It was like this oily, kind of like sticky, yellowy, gross kind of substance. And so I thought that was really interesting, and I started thinking through this lifetime of kind of the big betrayals I've had, where a lot of times for me, it's like going into a situation with a lot of authenticity and transparency and having that not reciprocated, and having a lot of times that actually trigger another person or people. And what I realized when I was looking at this lifetime, there's so many layers to this we're going to go through, but when I was looking at this lifetime, then it started leading me to look at past lifetimes. And I was thinking of the lifetime where I was tortured and killed and labeled a witch. I was thinking about my very first human lifetime where I was a medicine woman in what I believe was probably Peru, very powerful, using my voice to heal. And the other members of the tribe decided that my baby would have this really potent magic in its blood, and they took my baby and sacrificed him. It doesn't get much more betrayally than that, to offer yourself as in service to help others and then have them do something like that to you. That's a really deep wound of betrayal. And what I realized when I started looking at this pattern was that I have developed a pattern in response to that of what came through as self-betrayal, of sort of nipping it in the bud, so to speak. So before someone else can betray me, I betray myself. And I didn't really understand exactly what that meant until right before I went on to film this. I had this kind of aha moment. Speaking of Oprah, that's an Oprah phrase. And it kind of left me a little bit speechless. And it's not a two-part episode, but this episode is going to lead directly into what we're going to talk about next week. Because what lives beyond the horizon of hurt is claiming or reclaiming your own magnificence. And I've known that was going to be the next topic for a while. The whole top of my head is tingling. But I didn't realize how this topic led directly into that until just before I began filming this episode. And I'm going to tell you kind of how I got there. So I identified this pattern. I identified this kind of thing in my belly. And there was so much excavation to do because, again, there was all the stuff that had happened in this lifetime. You know, up till very recently, this year, I had a situation where I felt kind of very betrayed and had to work through that. And it was like, these are all, you know, this is all leaving residue. Like, yes, you've mostly worked through that, but there's a layer, and then there's a layer, and then there's a layer. And then these past life things that were really intense and really painful, you know, that leaves probably a bit more residue, in fact. But then under that, there was something even deeper. And that's what I didn't really resolve until yesterday. So it's interesting that I'm doing the show today, not earlier in the week as I had kind of initially planned to. So underneath that was this betrayal around my angelic origin. So we've talked about how this idea of the quantum body and how we've all lived multiple lives, multiple human lives, but multiple other being types of lives. Star origins, angelic origins, fairy realm origins. There's all these different origins. We're going to talk a lot more about that next week. I don't want to go too far down that path. But what I realized was there was this really deep betrayal that happened in this lifetime for me because I was cut off from my angelic guides for my childhood. And I've talked a little bit about that. I believe it was in the episode, What's the Deal with Ancestral Healing? There was essentially an ancestral block that was keeping me from being able to communicate with my archangel guides, and specifically Michael, who is my essentially guardian angel, who was there throughout my childhood doing his best to protect me, but I was supposed to be able to hear him. He was supposed to be able to guide me so that I would know what things like light language were, so that I wouldn't be afraid of it, so that I would know when I was seeing things that didn't look right, that I was actually seeing into another dimension and not shut that down. And so there was a very deep betrayal there for me, feeling like I was supposed to come into this life with this assistance that I didn't have access to until essentially last year was when he finally was able to break through, and I was able to essentially break this generational curse or clear this generational energy. And so for the last year, up until June, I was working really closely with this team of archangels, and I got really comfortable with them, and I got really reliant on them. And then I kept saying something was going to happen on June 15th, kind of globally. And what happened is that archangel, the angelic net around the globe shut down, and my archangels left to go work on that, to work on upgrading that. And that felt like another betrayal to me. I have been without my archangels up until I had a new one show up just this last week to help me through this whole process I'm going to talk about for almost 3 months now. And that doesn't sound like a long time, but with the kind of work I do and the depth of the work I do, to have no access to my main source of energy is angelic energy. That's one of the things I've been told to start just saying that and not worrying about how it comes across to people. I understand I had baggage around that wording for a long time. We're going to talk about that a lot next week. Some people's main source of energy is their starseed origin, Arcturian energy, Pleiadian energy, Andromedan energy. Some people are very connected to elemental earth energy, like the fairy realm, dragons, things like that. I think everybody has a first differentiation, kind of an origin of their differentiation from source energy. That is the source of their power, essentially. Again, we'll get into that more next week. So to be cut off from my origin energy, even for 10 weeks or however long it's been, it was a test of faith for me, and it's been hard. And I am so lucky I had all these other amazing beings step in, and that's maybe part of the reason this happened. I can even see that I've had Pleiadians come in. I've been really connecting with my Mintakan energy. I've had Arcturian energy come in. I've had more dragons come in. I mean, I've had so many people show up with fairy energy for work, that I've really connected with that realm in order to kind of channel to help these people reconnect with their energy. So it's not like I didn't have access to support or guidance, but my source energy, my origin energy has been missing for this amount of time. And I didn't really realize how betrayed I felt by that until I started kind of unwinding this big ball of hurt in my belly. And it was like, oh yeah, I see the residue of all these things that have happened where people have kind of betrayed me or have been hurt in a situation. And I see these really deep past life betrayal wounds, but like there's something even bigger here. And so I've been doing a lot of self work this last week. Since that meditation that we did in the bonus episode last week, it really led me to take time out. I've been at my office. I've been staying late, 20, 30, 40 minutes, lying on the table, doing meditation, receiving work from these other origin beings, just kind of having visions, trying to work through this. Because I will tell you that I'm not afraid of fear. I know how to work with fear. But this hurt is so, it's kind of insidious, and I did not realize like how deeply woven into my whole pattern of appearing in the world that this hurt that kind of led me to self-sabotage or self-betray was, until literally just before I came on to film this podcast. So I've been doing a lot of work. I've been receiving a lot of energy through my own channeling or from other people. And this weekend, I was able to receive just a very short Reiki session from someone. And I kept hearing this message, and it said, remember who you are, remember who you are, remember who you are. And I went back to the seraphim realm, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, you know, this is my space. Like, it was lovely, but I was kind of like, I don't understand what this means. I don't understand how this applies to the work I've been doing. And one of the things that came through was like, this space feels quote unquote normal to you, but to other people, this is a huge expansion of energy. So one of the things I've been led to do that I've been doing for a while, but not really understanding exactly why, is taking a moment at the end of a session with someone and just being in that space that is so close to source energy, that is just essentially holding the space of source energy. That's what seraphim do. It's another realization I had, like, oh, I'm really good at holding space, because that's where I came from, literally holding the space of the physical aspect of divine energy. So that came through, and I was like, oh, that's good. But like, it's one of those things, sometimes you don't see what you're missing until everything kind of coalesces into a whole, which again, it's sort of funny that like I was thinking about what I was going to talk about on this episode just before I got on, and then it was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this? So I've been working with this energy of hurt, kind of like not knowing really how to, not to let go of the energy. I know how to work with the energy. I've released the energy. That meditation we did last week went a long way toward that, toward like lifting that residue out. We're going to do that a little bit this week in a little different way. But it was like there was something there that I just couldn't quite, I was still missing something. And it was like the link to that pattern of behavior of me betraying myself that I didn't really understand. So yesterday I went to receive acupuncture. I go to a group clinic, which is amazing because you can kind of just hang out generally for as long as you need. I had to go into my office, so it's funny, I was there for a little over an hour, and it was like the blink of an eye, like, and I usually come out of it and I'm ready to go, and the acupuncturist had to come over and kind of say my name and pull me back because I was like in this really expanded space. So about a week ago, I hooked up with a new archangel, new to me, Zadkiel, who he said, I call him Zad or Zed. And he's been around. He came in with a client or for a client. And then when she left, he was like still there. And I was like, oh, you're her archangel. And he's like, no, I'm your version. So we all have archangels. We have our own personal version. So there's like, you know, a billion Zadkiels running around that are specifically there to help individuals, that are tailored to kind of your energy. That's why like my archangels have a sense of humor, because that helps me call energy through. That's one of my strengths. So he showed up and he's been around, and I'm like, oh, it's really nice to have an archangel. And like, kind of like, no offense to you, but like, you're not my archangel, or you haven't been, like, you're not, you know, my archangels are still off working on this grid. So I went to acupuncture yesterday, and before the acupuncturist even was like putting the needles in, you're in a recliner, and behind the chair, Zed was standing behind the chair with his arms kind of out, with his palms forward, just like, kind of like if you were in Shavasana or corpse pose in yoga with your arms kind of turned out and forward. But he was standing behind me, like waiting. I think he was waiting for the acupuncturist to put the needles in and kind of move away so I could get into this vision. And I had the sense that it was going to be a very intense and powerful experience. And as soon as the acupuncturist stepped away, he opened his mouth and started essentially, I would use the word screaming, but that's not quite right. That's the volume of it. And I was actually like looking around because I was like, is no one else hearing this? It was angelic singing essentially, but it's extremely powerful, and it's all these overtones. I think that's one of the reasons I like the Tibetan bowls, because they have all these overtones. It's not one tone. It's like infinite tones coming out of this like being at one time. And I just felt the power of this like moving through the space. And I was like, oh, okay, like we're in it now, let's do it. And then I received all this information, and I'll go into more of it next week once I've had a chance to process and organize it in a way that I can present it. But essentially, it was the extension of that message I got about remember who you are. And my origin is seraphim. It is the first differentiation from source, just barely in the physical, mostly a light being. And as I was reclaiming that power, as I was allowing that to really like flow back into me, I started receiving all this information about this angelic grid and my role in it. And I'm not going to get too far down that tangent today because we'll talk about it a lot more next week. But essentially it was a presentation to me of my own power. Here is the power you have given away. This is the realization I just had right before I came on this. So for me, this pattern I've had of self-betrayal, or, you know, I'm going to betray myself before you can betray me, essentially, what that really means is that I've been giving my power away in situations. I go into a situation like, hey, I'm not powerful, don't worry about me. Here it is, you can have it. So that when they come and try to take it, I don't have to have that confrontation. I'm just like, here it is, it's yours, just take it. I've just been giving my power away. And I did not have that realization in that way until just before I got on to talk about this. So all of this power was coming back into me, this reconnection to my origin. And there was all these things were happening with my archangels, and again, all this information about this grid that if we go into now, it'll take us way too far down a tangent. But essentially, I was being offered back my power. It was like, you've given away all this power. It's time for you to take it back. That's what you're here for. That's what this shift is. Take back your power. And immediately I started having all these fears about that. You know, what if I'm not that powerful? How can I think I'm this important? If I take this power, you know, what if I get corrupted? You know, there's that saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I realized that all of this, just now I realize, all of this is an extension of that self-betrayal. If I don't own my own power, if I'm constantly giving it away, I don't have to worry about the responsibility of having it. But what was coming through in this experience was that I've been trying to contain this power in my body. I've been trying to stop it from flowing, from moving, from being demonstrated in the world, because I've been hiding, because I've been betraying myself, because I've been telling everyone, oh no, I don't have any power. There's nothing to take from me. You know, you don't take my baby, don't take my life, don't take anything from me. I'll just give it to you. I don't want to go through that struggle again, through that battle, through that confrontation. I'll just give it. But what's been happening is that it's been getting stuck in my body and causing me all this pain. And so what I was guided into yesterday was to reclaim the power. The power is meant to move. Energy is meant to move. It's not meant to be stuck in one place. And that is demonstrated with everything that is energy. Anything that is abundant energy, like money, it's not meant to just sit. It's meant to move. It's meant to flow. That is what energy is meant to do. And so by me denying my own power, I have been hoarding it. Essentially, I've been holding it in my body so that people wouldn't see it, so that they wouldn't try to take it from me. And it's been causing me all of these physical ailments, because our body's not meant to hold that much power. And especially this angelic power that I have is not meant to be held in a physical body. It's not human energy. It's not of this plane. So it can't be held in this plane. It needs to be held in an angelic plane. That's what that grid is. It's a grid to hold angelic energy just beyond this physical realm, for this physical realm. We'll get into that more next week. So I had this really powerful experience of essentially reclaiming my power, of allowing it to move, of allowing it to be expressed, of allowing it to figure out where it's meant to be in space. And I'm still processing the intensity of that, the intense shift of that. But the first thing that changed is that this thing in my solar plexus is no longer there. What's in my solar plexus is a focus of this power that had essentially been covered up by the residue of all of this betrayal that turned into my pattern of self-betrayal. And what I was thinking of when I was working with this was, a long time ago we did an episode where we cleaned our lighthouse windows. I talked about how our light never dims, but it kind of gets covered up. And so it was like all of this residue was around this light. And it's time for me to shine the light, to really, really, really let it be seen. And there is fear in that. This is a long-standing pattern that I have to stand up to within myself. I may have been hurt by others, but this pattern exists entirely within me. And I'm the only one who can change it. I'm the only one who can reclaim my power. And I have the power to do that in any moment, and so do you. And that is what this 3D to 5D shift, that's what this is about. It's about these powerful beings that are here to help with this shift. We cannot do that if we are disowning our own power, if we are betraying ourselves by giving away our power, if we are trying to hold our power and clamp it down in our body so that we are hiding. We're in that fawn response, that nervous system response of, I'm not a threat. There's nothing to see here. Don't hurt me like you've hurt me in the past. I think everybody who's here to really own their power in this lifetime absolutely has been here before, absolutely has had that power forcibly, not removed, because you can't really take power, but has been killed for the power, has been tortured, has been betrayed for the light that existed within them. And the saddest thing about that is that this light exists within everybody. So the people who are attracted to your power because they're trying to take it for themselves are giving their own power away by not acknowledging that this power exists within them. And so those of us who are willing to reclaim our own magnificence, really willing to step back into our power, we are here to lead as examples. Not because we're better than anyone, not because we have more power, not because there's a hierarchy. It's because this exists within everyone. And the only way for people to see that it's safe to reclaim their power is to watch other people doing it, is to resonate with someone like me who's doing it in a really public, vulnerable way in order to show that it's possible, in order to show that absolute power does not corrupt absolutely. Human power corrupts. Source energy power is the shift that we are headed into. The things that human beings in the 3D consider power, things like having money and political power and things like that, those are false idols, to use a Christian term. That's not real power. That does not last. When you die, does your money go with you? No. When you die, does your political power go with you? No. The only thing that you take with you when you leave this life is your own source energy. That is the only true power that exists in the universe. And at the bottom of all of these different beautiful types of energy we have access to in this physical realm to help raise the vibration, elevate, expand, at the source of it all is unconditional love. That is the only real power that exists in the universe. But it's scary to own that power for yourself, because we are told over and over again, not just in this life, but through lifetimes, that it's not safe to own that power, that we don't deserve to own that power, that we're not worthy of it in some way. And that is really what this big shift is about. Reclaiming our power, reclaiming our magnificence. And in order to get there, we have to do this sometimes heavy, dense release work, this shadow work, this looking at what is blocking me from my own power. It is within me. It did not come from outside me. I am the one doing this to myself. And that's a hard mirror to look into, to realize that even though, yes, you've been hurt by others, and even though there's this interaction in this physical, it's really all about you. It's really all about your own stuff that you're holding on to, figuring out how to release that, and then stepping into what's next. So, if you would like to access the meditation that's accompanying this episode, you need to be a member of the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary. You can do that by clicking the link in the show notes. You can go to paulataylorenergy.com, go to the savings and subscriptions. One of the things that these members are receiving through the end of the year is 50% off the Starseed and Angelic energy activations I'm beginning to offer. The first one is it's a Mintakan energy activation, really powerful way to reconnect with self-love. You cannot reclaim your power without reconnecting to love for yourself. And that is one of the hardest journeys for most of us. So that is there as a tool for you if you feel called to it. We are here at this time together to change the fabric of the way humanity has been operating. And this is the work that will allow that shift to happen. This inner work, this internal work in which we as individuals and collectively release the things that have been separating us from our own power. And we step into the courage of reclaiming our power a little at a time. It doesn't have to be overnight. It's not meant to be. But each time we participate in a collective practice like this, we are shifting the very nature of the reality we are living in. So the more of us that do this, and the more often we do these types of practices, the more expansion we have access to collectively. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. Know that you are incredibly powerful and that you deserve to own that power. I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.